what does entertainment mean for these people? It's usually pursuit of some sort of ROI. It's a game that maintains relevance. No sort of, no sweaty business plan, no tooling. The crypto ecosystem at large just feels like an MMO to me. It feels like a game. I think Axie went to like 40 billion, which is absolutely insane, right? That's like 3 times what Hyperliquid currently is valued at. A crypto gaming audience is one that needs to understand what they need to do really, really quickly. And then the more potential there is to make money, the more friction you can add, the more complexity you can add, the more systems, the more games. I think prediction markets eat the trenches because they're the same game, but everyone can play them.
So today we're talking with Dith. For those of you who haven't seen him on the timeline, Dith, who are you and why should I find you interesting?
So I'm the co-founder of Gigaverse. Gigaverse is a crypto game. Started off as an RPG, but we're really building towards a wider vision of kind of a social MMO. I've been building in the space for a few years now. Why should you find me interesting? I think because I like to build interesting stuff. I really like doing things that haven't been done before, even if they're kind of experimental or risky or contrarian. Yeah, and there's kind of a bunch of things under that umbrella that we've done with Gigaverse and the studio. Our studio, which is Good Luck, Have Fun.
Well, I have found you very interesting across the years I've been following, and that is obviously why I wanted to talk to you some more, because I know we've talked plenty of times in the past. One thing that I kind of am looking for more with crypto projects recently is what is the problem that they see? Not even talking about the solve just yet. What problems do you see in the world at large or just in the tech space that crypto is solving and you see solving in the next couple of years?
I think for us specifically building a crypto game, we're trying to solve for entertainment, right? We want people to have like an engaging experience that they find like really interesting, they want to go down the rabbit hole on. I think with crypto games as kind of they're different from like broader games in that like the motivation of people playing them is a little bit different. What does entertainment mean for these people? It's usually pursuit of some sort of ROI, right? Some sort of arbitrage or profit-seeking opportunity. But I think the games that do this really, really best cater to that and have some sort of financialized entertainment available for players, but really builds a culture and community around it that is long-term a lot more meaningful and sticky than the short-term financial upside that comes in peaks and troughs with any ecosystem, right? So come for the ROI and stay for the community type thing.
Okay, and I think I'll definitely circle back onto that come for the ROI, because I think that is an interesting hook for bringing people in. But if you could wave a magic wand, all the deving, everything is done, what would kind of solved look like in 2 or 3 years for crypto gaming as an entertainment source?
I think what we haven't seen over the fullness of time is just a game that maintains relevance and evolves at the pace you'd expect it to as a player, as a community member. A lot of games in the crypto gaming category seem to have a shelf life ranging from sometimes it's literally 1 to 3 days up until say like a year. And beyond a year, or let's say beyond an airdrop, have you seen that chart which is like days in the life of a Christmas turkey? Yeah, and then it just falls off a cliff at some point when comes Christmas time and the turkey has died. So yeah, you see a lot of that. And I think, really what we need to see more teams navigate the ebbs and flows of cycles and iterate, if necessary, pivot, and just ultimately grow enough to build like a long-term sustainable product and business. Like you see, in Web 2, you have Fortnite, you have PUBG, you have some games which have been under development for like a decade. Been getting better all along. The player numbers have been growing. The entertainment value has been growing. The spend in those games has been growing. We just don't see that for most crypto games on a medium to long-term basis just yet.
And just to kind of touch on, I think one key word that you mentioned in there around iteration, what with Gigaverse and maybe when you're looking wider in the space, what made you kind of build in the way you have been, that you haven't gone for we're the next AAA shooter taking massive swings? You've kind of built it up and you've shared the journey quite a lot on the timeline around starting from kind of part-time working on it, then full-time, then adding more team members as the game grew itself. What made you take that iterative approach rather than some of these kind of moonshots that we are seeing happen more often?
I think it's probably 2 things. The first being that really our journey has been very, very organic. In my life, I've definitely built startups, which I would say were a little bit more like sweaty business school type startups, where you're like trying to think of a problem you want to solve and what's the size of the TAM, and then you write a business plan, and then you think about hiring a team and how do you get financing and the rest. And that, we just didn't do that with Gigaverse whatsoever. It was myself, my co-founder Garnish, and our founding artist Banyo in a Discord, like, hey, let's build something for fun and see where it goes. No expectations, no sort of, no sweaty business plan, no tooling. Literally all we had was a couple channels in a Discord, and we probably had a total of like just 2 or 3 live calls prior to bringing the game live. So very, very organic. Just allowed us to like really kind of optimize for personal joy of like building, like wanting to build something cool, wanting to take each step at a time. Our kind of strategy on like monetization first strategy was also just a means for us to actually finance the project. Like we hadn't even discussed VC funding prior to launching the game. And actually even when we started meeting VCs and receiving term sheets, we almost decided not to go down that path. Which brings me to my second point, which is that I think a lot of the teams you see build in Web3 gaming come from a school of, like, if you come from a large gaming studio, then you don't really understand or see or relate to games being built without big teams and without big budgets. It's just kind of what you know. And so, you start from a point of like, how do we finance this thing and how do I hire a bunch of people? Whereas our profile as builders, we're a lot more like indie game devs. My co-founder Garnish was running his own studio. He's solo built a number of games. And so, we approach this much more from a perspective of look how much we can get done with just 2 or 3 people, rather than from the perspective of like what we can't get done with just that amount of people.
I think that's a great point, and I think stalking you across the timeline, launching without any funding is a great forcing function. Here's a quote from Dith. I knew I'd butcher it at the end. One thing with it is that the game, like I know the game came from Discord originally. There was the kind of Dungeotron within Discord itself before coming kind of as Gigaverse on chain. At what point did you think, yes, crypto's definitely going to add to this? Or was it always, we want to make something that showcases what crypto can do? Was it like was there ever a thought of actually maybe this game doesn't even need crypto while you were doing it?
Not really. So I love spending time in crypto as a participant, firstly. Like I'm not a great trader per se, but I've traded almost every week since I got into the space 5 years ago. And I just love it. Like it feels, the entirety of like, the crypto ecosystem at large just feels like an MMO to me. It feels like a game. And I want to participate in that game, whether I win or lose or draw. And I really like the people. I really like the culture. Love the memes. Love NFTs. Still find NFTs really fun, even though they're obviously a shadow of their former selves. So it was never a question of whether we would incorporate crypto culture and crypto payments and NFTs into the game. It was kind of always a given. We never had a conversation about whether we should or shouldn't or the pros or cons. Yeah, it's just always a given for us.
And then one of the, I don't know if it's even a criticism, it's more kind of a fact, but some people take it negatively. Gigaverse is rock, paper, scissors, almost, with more on top now, and I know that you're building out extra pieces all the time. Why do you think that such a simple kind of loop actually did so well at catching people's attention when you released it?
Because we didn't make people think. It's probably like rule number 1 of user experience, right? Don't make people think. And then once they are like, oh, I know how to do this. I know how to use this app. I know how to play this game. Super simple. Then you need to do the next thing, right? Which is actually think about, okay, well, how do we bring them deeper into the funnel? Have them realize like, oh, actually, there's a little bit more to this than I initially thought. Have some sort of eureka moment, and then you kind of move beyond this first impression of it being like just rock, paper, scissors. So yeah, it was interesting to me that I did see when we launched, some people were like just kind of minimizing what we were doing and saying this is just way too simple. And my thinking at the time was like, no, this is entirely the point. There's a quote by the composer Chopin, which is like, it's something like simplicity is the ultimate form or the final form. And I actually think more teams, including ourselves, as the game grows, need to keep simplicity as like a top product priority.
And with the idea of kind of keeping simplicity kind of up there, what do you think is the reason that something similar to this wasn't able to come out in like the first wave of crypto gaming, say 2021, 2022? Or do you just think maybe no one thought of it?
Well, firstly, what happened in 2021, the speed at which things got really silly really quickly, it just, I mean, you ask most people who were there at the time, and it just feels like it all happened kind of overnight. And it was like, you know, in hindsight, it was such a crazy time and a crazy bubble, right? Like, actually, if you look at the peak of, I think Axie went to like 40 billion, which is absolutely insane, right? That's like 3 times what Hyperliquid currently is valued at, which is like all the rage now, number one, you know, revenue generating crypto app, and, you know, kind of leaders of the revenue meta, so to speak, and so on and so forth. So it was just a kind of a crazy time where things happened so quickly. What we ended up seeing in that period, 2021, was like teams were like, oh shit, we should pay attention, we should build something here. But then they went down that path that you kind of described, that they were like, okay, we need to go and raise. You saw that reflected actually, like 2020 and 2021 and 2022 were like peak years for VC funding in games. It's fallen off a cliff ever since. It's been declining since 2023 onwards. So I think that's what we saw, like a bunch of teams realize like, oh yeah, let's give this a go. But rather than try to do something in a very scrappy way and launch an app in like a month or two, they're like, hey, we're going to go and raise, and we're going to take our sweet time then to build. And they probably thought like, hey, Web3 gaming is like going to be this massive thing forever now, and there's going to be many multiple, you know, billion-dollar tokens. And of course, it's not played out that way. And, you know, for us, like I think if our team had known one another, and if all the sort of circumstance lined up for us back then, I like to think we probably would have given Gigaverse a shot. What would have been different, of course, is just like, look at the level of like UX and tooling that existed back then was just drastically different. Like, we didn't have Privy, right? Everyone knows Privy. It's just a great example of what really good modern crypto user experience looks like. That stuff didn't exist back then, and there's like a lot more friction. It's harder to get started, which again is just like to illustrate how crazy things got. Despite all that sort of friction, lack of tooling, we were still able to see, you know, a game like Axie pull in the numbers that they did. It's kind of crazy.
I think it's interesting to kind of reflect on the fact that at that point, some people did see it lasting for a long time, even if it had come overnight, and so spent more time talking than building. Whereas this, I don't know, lower attention during this period has probably made it easier to kind of slowly grind out that building process, not feel like it's so rushed. Did you feel that at all, or how's that coming in?
Yeah, but I don't know if that's a good thing. Like, we've seen the majority of these teams, right, for example, who raised a bunch of money and then felt like time was on their side. They didn't need to rush. They could, you know, have a game under development for 2-3 years and then launch. Like, it hasn't worked out well for most of them. For us, again, the approach was like, firstly, we have no expectations. We haven't incurred any sort of investor expectations or debt there. We can just put something out that we love and we think is fun. We can iterate on it quickly once it's live. We can improve this thing like week on week. We don't need it to be the finished product, which allows us to, you know, we can monetize immediately, get community feedback immediately, and then build with the community so they feel a sense of ownership over what we're developing. So that, you know, our model makes a ton more sense to us. You know, we intentionally released the game in a very early state. As you say, everyone just kind of, in those days, were like, what the hell, is this literally just rock, paper, scissors? And we're like, yeah, but wait and see what it evolves into.
Yeah, but rock, paper, scissors is good. Trust me. That's why everyone knows how to play it.
Yeah.
In terms of kind of the idea of getting a product out quick so people can see what you're actually essentially selling, do you feel that there is a bit of a marketing disadvantage grabbing the attention versus people who are just selling vaporware, essentially, because they can say anything, whereas you have already shown what the product is, even if you are still iterating on it?
I mean, there's almost always a case for like, oh, would we have a stronger launch if we had X, Y, or Z feature? You know, I think some of those X, Y, and Z features can be rationalized. Like, for example, I think it was a miss that we launched without like referral links. It's a kind of a no-brainer for a launch, right? Let people share their links, and that kind of drives kind of free growth for you, right? But you often see founders suddenly, you know, X, Y, and Z becomes a list of like 20 things that they convince themselves they really need to launch. And without those things, there's no way the launch will be successful. And, you know, our list, what was on our MVP was really quite Spartan. We just wanted people to be able to like log in. We wanted the game to be stable, to look good, to, you know, have a certain level of crunchiness to like buttons and sounds. So there's like a basic level of polish for you to like feel it's like a bit of dopamine as you progress through this hard dungeon. You're getting items dropping. Sometimes it's like a rare item. We then put the marketplace in pretty soon after launch, and then you could see real-time prices, how the player community was pricing those items. So our MVP list was really quite Spartan, and we just didn't allow ourselves to like, oh no, we need this extra thing. I think the final thing there is that we just saw the value in being early to an ecosystem like Abstract, where people are paying attention and are looking for things to do on the chain. So, that was the trade-off. We wanted to go earlier, even though we had less to offer, than like wait a year and have a more built-out game, not knowing where the market would be at that time, not knowing, how much kind of competition for attention there would be at that time, and also not knowing if any other number of issues would crop up as we kind of like ran our team in, at that point, throughout that journey. So I think it's like altogether our strategy made sense, launching on Abstract early, but having a very sort of like specific approach to the MVP that we launched.
And talking about the launch with it being on Abstract, you mentioned kind of at the start that players are looking more for that ROI, but I noticed for everything that you put out and even the stuff that the Gigaverse kind of creators are putting out, kind of ability to sell things you find within the dungeon has almost been secondary to it. So the ROI is still there, but it's not pushed in the same way that we've previously seen a lot of play to earn kind of pushed. Has that been a conscious decision, or do you think the community's just picked up on it? And then kind of tying into the Abstract angle, do you think that there is still the underlying idea that some people are playing it because they expect Abstract XP to suddenly turn into an airdrop at some point?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have a cohort of people whose primary motivation is farming Abstract, collecting XP. And then as you point out, we have another cohort of people who don't care so much about that. We see that reflected in how they behave, how they interact, how they participate in the community, but also in the data, that they're not trying to like optimize the Abstract stubs. They may have the items in their inventory and they'd rather keep them in their inventory. It's more valuable for them to actually like build up their in-game inventory and craft and progress in the game than trade those items in to collect stubs, which translate into Abstract XP. And I think it's really important that we recognize this. Like, part of serving your users well is understanding them, empathizing with their motivation. And we do often see it in this space that like teams kind of want to fool themselves with their communities and like pretend that, crypto people's motivation isn't centered around ROI. I think it's unnecessary, and you probably have a less successful outcome that way. You need to be honest with yourselves about this, and there's no shame in it. And, you just need to be awake to the fact and the realization that people are predominantly in crypto. People are here, like, they're interested in like making money. They're interested in like generating profits. I would actually say, like, my view of the market is probably have 90% of people whose primary motivation is making profit. Another sort of 9% of people whose primary motivation is building clout, building sort of influence, growing their social presence. And then you have that remaining 1% who are like true collectors, really love the tech, really just want to be part of something. I think games like ours, what we're trying to do is make sure that we tap into as much of the 1% as we can to be able to build a product that speaks to them. And I've definitely seen some gaming communities that are like 100% farmers, and it feels like no one is there for anything beyond the ROI or the airdrop, and which is why you see those games completely fall apart after said airdrop. But yeah, you need to like kind of recognize this is broadly the audience composition. Yeah, if you build a really good game and build the right kind of community and are placing the right emphasis in the right certain ways, you can just tap into more of that 1% than you otherwise normally would.
I think that's a great point around understanding your community, and I do think a lot of projects have rose-tinted glasses about why people are in their Discord every day talking, and then a little bit taken aback when everyone suddenly vanishes. I think that it's good to understand it, even if it might still happen. It's good to understand that it could happen.
But this is also why I heavily encourage other founders, if you're going to come in and build in Web3 gaming and try to build a crypto game, you have to trade, you have to participate in the market. How are you otherwise going to understand your users? This is why I think like we've seen Web3 gaming studios, really smart, really accomplished game builders coming from Web2, they built XYZ, big brand name game, and then the game just doesn't really hit, right? No one wants to play it, and they can't understand why. We raised tens of millions of dollars, we have all this pedigree, we have this like awesome marketing agency, why does no one play our game? It's like, yeah, fundamentally you just don't understand your customers. And the outcome is similar, not just in crypto gaming, but like in most businesses. If you don't understand your customers, then like good luck building a product that they're going to love.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of something we've seen quite a lot, especially when they don't realise why a lot of their communities there take the community feedback, but they don't have the framing of why someone's telling them that piece of feedback. They misunderstand that this is someone trying to make the game better versus someone who's maybe trying to add in something that would make ROI better, and they confuse the two when they're taking feedback in.
Yeah, totally. Or we've seen this, we've seen some of these takes as well, kind of shitting on farmers, right? I think that's completely the wrong take. This is just a kind of a user persona, customer persona in the space. And you as a team need to decide how much you want to like serve those users and lean into them and develop sort of incentive structures and how you communicate to cater to them or not. You know, really the apps and the protocols and the games that end up serving farmers are the ones who turn around later and pretend to be the victim, but often like they made very specific moves to reach those farmers. So if you do that, it should be with high intention, recognizing that like you can easily attract farmers if you want them, but then don't be surprised with their sort of motivation and behavior, or think that you can kind of change them, right? I think it's just like very important to be honest with yourselves, and if you go after a sort of farming user or persona, like it should be with high intention, knowing like we've seen this movie play out like a number of times now, right?
Yeah, I had a post, it must be 3 years ago at this point, which was essentially development choice isn't, oh, please don't farm us, ooh woo. That's not a design decision. You need to actually build with it in mind, not just ask people not to. I think that was off the back of loads of play to airdrop where people were surprised that people were only playing it for the airdrop. It's like, that's just how you've designed it to happen.
Yeah, 100%.
In terms of making money, it's not just users who want to make money. You guys as a project also want to make money. You have talked about making revenue, kind of selling things within the game quite often across the timeline. And it's normally met with positivity and also not quite surprise, as if people see it as something enlightened. But I would have thought that most businesses understand that they need to be making money. Do you think that making more revenue than you're spending is still a novel idea within crypto?
Okay, so there's this point that we discussed earlier, right? Just about raising, like, you know, an era where like many teams, especially in Web3 gaming, started off before there was any game, before there was any MVP, before there was anything. They started off with that big chunky VC raise, right? And it does kind of flip the thinking. Again, I've built those kind of startups that start with a fundraise and then you do the stuff after. You build the team, you do the product development, you release something like a year after the raise. So it flips the thinking, right? It gives you kind of a cushion, kind of forces you down the sort of like, oh, we're now a VC funded business, so we're looking to return like a 100x of what we raised. So this needs to be a moonshot. We can't think about early monetization. We're going to be like Amazon. We're going to like drive to profitability later down the line. It may take us 10 years to get there or whatever. But yeah, I mean, like, you know, VCs who are good VCs know what the odds are there, right? And they know that like most of those businesses will fail and never reach that kind of point. I think most founders don't go into a VC-backed business model anticipating failure. Many do think like, hey, we just have a bunch of time. That if we, you know, if funds are running low, we can turn on profitability then. It's often a bit too late and a bit too hard, and your back's up against the wall. So that's definitely one factor. The other is probably that, you know, I think we just have like a really broad spectrum of founder experience in the space and a really broad spectrum of first principles with regards to building, and common sense as well. You know, it turns out both in the space and out of it, it's just like not always that common. So I think it's kind of a result of like, we're now at the tail end of seeing a lot of these studios who raised a lot in 2021 and 2022, you know, what happened to that cohort. And, you know, for the most part, those outcomes aren't great. And we've seen this kind of like relatively mixed bag in terms of founder approach and experience level, you know, and for us, so, you know, with our approach, again, it was just sort of by necessity. Again, it wasn't an intentional thing whatsoever. It was just kind of the obvious, like, hey, once the game launches, let's think about monetizing it. We'll use that monetization to like justify further sort of time and effort we put towards this thing. I guess there was one very intentional part about that strategy, which was just that like we believed that we would build a higher quality player base, right? A player base that actually has some skin in the game and that aren't conditioned from the outset to like just want everything for absolutely free without kind of putting anything back into it. You care more about a game economy where you have skin in the game and have contributed towards its growth and the underlying business behind it, right? So we were quite intentional about that. I had specifically kind of like seen some of the players we were bringing into Pirate Nation when we post-token launch. Yeah, we had this token that was, you know, in the beginning performing really, really well, but you could enter the game for completely for free. You could spend absolutely $0 and just seek to earn the token or just be selling items. So I think that was maybe one driver of the intentionality of just like wanting to build a higher quality community with skin in the game. But yeah, I think the reason many teams haven't followed that path are for the reasons I mentioned.
Kind of one bit in terms of the starting to make money and revenue that I find really interesting about kind of what you did, and you wrote a piece about it as well to explain it, is moving the marketplace from being an external third party and kind of putting it within the game itself, and how you saw that affect kind of just sales and the user actions. Was that a surprise, just that simple change, or did you expect that to happen? And kind of how is that still playing out now, having the marketplace actually within the game?
Yeah, so I think that to us that felt just sort of like 101 stuff in terms of strategy and user experience. I think since we've done it, I've seen other games take that approach as well. I mean, it's just sort of atrocious user experience, right? If people are playing a game and then to like trade the item economy around the game, they have to go to some like third-party website, connect their wallet there again, browse those items or those assets, and often that third-party UI won't have any context about what those items are. This makes no sense. Like having an embedded trading experience is like 100% the way. And I think we see that, I mean, even in other types of games, right? I think Football.fun at launch, you also had the embedded trading experience and ran your own pools, and just like realize the value of like owning the stack there, having it all happen in a single window, and recognize like, hey, this actually makes good business sense and we can capture fees there. It's a better user experience and it's part of our revenue model. So I think it just makes a ton of sense. It's kind of bewildering that you still see some games, choose not to do this.
I am telling every game who I talk to do it just for those reasons. I think it's just such a smoother experience, and I couldn't imagine going somewhere else in traditional games to buy items that I need within the game. It just wouldn't happen. In terms of kind of, you mentioned like a little bit around the marketplace and capturing fees just there. Now that Gigaverse has been running for a while, how kind of have you seen the benefits of it actually being on chain in terms of usefulness, whether it's bringing in users, whether it's kind of for you on the back end monitoring what people are up to? Are you seeing benefits for it being on chain?
I still believe in the ownership narrative. I think ownership and interoperability are cool and still meaningful when the game is relevant, right? And hasn't faded into obscurity and the economy is totally died, which I think has diminished that value prop and that narrative for a lot of other games. I still believe in the power of ownership. What I will say though is we've just been very intentional in our actual, like our architecture decisions around Gigaverse. We're not putting things on chain just because it's cool or the narrative. We're really being like very thoughtful in deciding to, whether we put something on chain or not. And in the case of the game items, we use both on chain and off chain. It's actually a user controlled decision whether you want to import or export the item on chain or off chain. And so, we can kind of like cover best of both worlds there. And very quickly, it just allows us within our marketplace, items can be traded off chain. Equally, if someone wants to go and use a third party platform like OpenSea, some people still do, for whatever reason, they can do that. They can export the item from their game inventory. It's now on chain. They can send it to a friend. It could be recognized in another game, it could give them entry to another game or something like that. And of course, they can use these third party marketplaces as well. We're just not very dogmatic about like, hey, everything has to be on chain just because that's the way or that's cool, which is something that I saw, when I was working at Stripe as well. That company is not dogmatic about crypto. It's not a decentralization warriors who are on this like sort of crusade about those things. It's very much, the decisions are made very much through a lens of like, how can we best serve our users? What is the user trying to accomplish? How can we give them a really good experience around that? And then being actually really flexible on the product and technology side, right? Let's just be really pragmatic. Let's actually, deliver. They don't care if we're hosted on AWS or GCP or if we use this payment rail or that payment rail or if it's on chain, off chain, centralized, decentralized, like focus on like fulfilling the core user motivation, right? So try to see it through that same pragmatic lens.
And then you mentioned the splitting between the two aspects of traditional and on-chain. Do you think that would allow crypto games to be more complex games rather than the ones that we've seen that try and be too on-chain find it quite limiting currently in what genres and keep it quite niche right now?
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually think there's a higher appetite for complex games in traditional gaming, right? With traditional gamers more so than crypto gamers. Again, I think a crypto gaming audience is one that needs to understand what they need to do really, really quickly. And then the more potential there is to make money, the more friction you can add, the more complexity you can add, the more systems, the more game theory and the rest. Like they'll have an appetite to come down the funnel. But again, you have to deliver on the, if the ROI piece isn't there, then people just won't have an appetite, at least not at scale. I think there's like some really interesting games in take an ecosystem like Starknet, where actually a lot of the players are also builders, right? And so if the game isn't like a certain level of complexity, it just doesn't kind of interest that audience as much. But I don't know how large that audience is. As far as I'm aware, it's like a couple thousand people. If you want to serve crypto native gamers at large, then the simplicity is important, and you can only pull them down the sort of complexity funnel once there's a confidence level around the ROI of the ecosystem. Whereas I think in Web2 gaming, you can go really, really complex, and if the entertainment value is there, then it can work. And the last thing here is I think there are some games which, like, I'm very impressed with Cambria, right? The level of system design that they have and complexity. They're still able to like actually cultivate a pretty big community, and it's definitely not like a super easy game to like kind of understand. There's a learning curve there. I think there are like outlier, standout examples of games that are able to pull it off. But for the most part, simplicity is key. And I think that's just more from a user design perspective. I don't think it's necessarily about on-chain or off-chain.
Now, I have some quick fire questions to do with the future for you. So you're taking a look at tomorrow, and we're going to see what tomorrow is going to look like. So do you think that crypto and crypto gaming, or just as a wider scope, will escape Twitter in the next 2 or 3 years?
Escape Twitter? Yes, I think in the next 2 or 3 years, there'll be other channels. Right now, we're heavily reliant on Twitter as the primary channel. But I think over the course of the next 2-3 years, our reliance on Twitter alone will decrease.
Going a bit further and just looking at crypto in general, what's the worst example of vaporware that's currently being pushed in crypto?
Oof. I would say, this meme that there's more infrastructure than good apps. And, I'll specifically call out kind of ghost chains. No traction, no usage, no culture, no real innovation there. Founders have cashed out. Their token is still somewhere between like 100 mil and $1 billion in FDV, with more unlocks coming. And I think there's a bunch that will fit that mold, right? It's like infrastructure that doesn't need to exist and isn't actually propping anything up. And it's just like, there's a bunch in that category.
I think we saw some funny tweets about when people started getting their first payments from Elon on Twitter, that some people were making more from tweets on Twitter than these chains were making in fees.
Yeah. So there you go.
Outside of crypto gaming, what are you most excited to see grow in the next 3 to 6 months?
In the crypto hemisphere, it's prediction markets. I think prediction markets eat the trenches because they're the same game, but everyone can play them.
Your boy Pumpcade, what's your hope?
I see it through a couple of lenses, right? One is just, I was looking at this lens through like social media, right? You think of the Facebook generation where it's like, okay, we're in a web app, there's like this, I have to connect to my friends, and I'm looking through the timeline, and I'm doing like one post every couple of days. That was like Facebook, right? And look where we've come now. It's like this TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram. There's a lot more content. It's a lot more fast and furious. There's just like a e-commerce, right? Amazon is Amazon because they have this like long tail of content. They have just like a lot of shit for people to buy and browse. And so I go onto Polymarket or Kalshi, and to be fair, like there's pretty good inventory of predictions. But again, it's like what, a couple hundred or maybe 300 or 500. And most of them like resolve in like, I think the quickest is like by the end of the day, but many are like longer than that. And okay, they're kind of smart about it, right? They have like, they let you farm some yield in the meantime. What's the Tinderization or the TikTokification of prediction markets? It's like a much longer tail of content. Results, the prediction is resolved within like 30 seconds to 10 minutes, or say an hour. It's much smaller bet sizes. It's much more like discrete. It's a much larger pool and more discrete pool of participants as well, right? Rather than like 50,000 power users, which is what you currently, 50 or 100,000 power users. You actually have millions of people making micro bets. Bigger trend, right? The hyper gamification of everything. And I can actually see it later being in like a Snapchat, that as you're flicking through, it's not just like an ad that you're served. It's maybe a like, hey, do you think X or Y? Who's going to win the football match tomorrow? And you can just like swipe left or right. It's like an up or down or left or right or yes or no type prediction, very small number of bets. Probably take an approach like this guy is doing, right? Pari-mutuel market. The pool is basically just based on whoever chucks money into it. So I can definitely see the evolution of prediction markets moving out of this like Facebook era style, boomer style marketplace, right? And moving much into embedded micro markets, long tail content, smaller bet sizes, larger participating pool of people, and like markets everywhere. I don't know how long it takes us to get there, but thinking this myself and wondering why others aren't building it. And then I saw what he was building, and I haven't seen anyone else build like this. We'll see way more teams doing this over time. There's so much that can be done with it, but I do think the largest long-term existential threat to the trenches are prediction markets, because rather than me needing to like convince you for you to know how and where to go buy the Pumpcade token and think is it going to go up or down, right? How many people in the world know what Pumpcade is right now? I don't know, 10,000, 20,000 people? So how many people can participate in that bet? Whereas if we just talk about trivial things, do you think it's going to be sunny or rainy tomorrow? Do you think Arsenal is going to win the football match tomorrow? Do you think Keir Starmer will still be PM in a year? Everyone can play those games. Everyone can experience that, the same outcome and the same payoff, or maybe not the 1000x in some cases, but it's ultimately the same game. It's going to be a huge, huge category.
I think my issue with prediction markets is I spent a lot of time on betting exchanges historically. Prediction markets are betting exchanges almost. So when people are surprised about them, think they're brand new, some of the maths that people do around, well, this is, it's 95% going to win, I'm just buying money here, and they're risking like $1,000 for $5. I'm like, this is just madness. But I don't know, maybe I'm just being too risk averse. Even when I was doing the exchanges, it was very maths based. You compare different exchanges and play the edges.
Yeah. I think your point's valid, but your perspective is very much one through that of your own lens. Someone who actually understands the math and is triggered by the bozos who don't. But remember, for most of these bozos, they are blissfully ignorant, and they're going to bet whether they understand the numbers or not.
I like that idea of it's almost just a swipe and it's a yes, no. You've got a default bet size that's your account bet size, and it just throws you questions that you can bet on, and then it resolves really quickly. I like that.
The other thing I think about is just like, honestly, it's not that much fun. I made some bets on prediction markets about I like the earnings one, because like most companies have been beating their earnings, right? It don't make a lot of money, but it's just like an easy farm and you make some money. I was like, this is not fun. The case for the trenches is that it's like retarded and actually really fun. What makes it fun? It's like the short-term nature of it, the drama element of it, and it being more social, like being in these coins with your friends. If you had like live prediction markets on a football match as you're sitting around on the sofa drunk with a bunch of friends, and everyone can chip in $5 to try to predict on something that you're all going to see play out in front of you in the next 5 to 10 minutes. There's a market for this. There's like a behavior for this. Kind of already happens. If you have a product or UX that makes it very fucking simple and easy for that to play out, I think people will do it. And it will be a lot more fun and a lot more social than this sort of like, do you think PayPal's going to like beat earnings, find out in 24 hours, make $10? I would rather make or lose $10 in the next minute based on whether this guy is going to like score the goal or not.
I'm in that one. For sure, because mine's like, I kind of see that a little bit with some of the NFTs I've always bought for games and stuff, that I'll buy them and this might do well eventually, and then I don't even know, I just forget, I never go back to them, and because I never found out the answer, it's not something I repeat often.
That's so true. Like the mental load of staying on top of, because these are all bets that you're making basically, updating your priors, staying informed enough with what's going on there, and updating your own mental prediction of the percentage likelihood of like successful outcome. There's like work involved there. If we could resolve these outcomes and you find out in 10 minutes, I mean, yeah, it's definitely a case for it.
If you were trying to get someone to get into crypto now, where would you send them to start?
I would have to be Gigaverse.
Boom. Thanks for coming on, Dith. It's been great chatting to you. I am excited to see how much of it comes up in the near future and the distant future. Maybe in 2 or 3 years' time, we're completely off Twitter and everyone's talking about crypto and excited about it.
We're not even going to be talking, man. My agent will talk to yours, and then they'll come back and update each of us.
Well, good to have you.
Yeah, likewise, bud. Thanks.